The UK government has just made a shocking decision, handing over the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius after more than 200 years of control. So, what's behind this agreement? What will happen to the strategic Diego Garcia Island, home to a crucial US military base? Could China take advantage of this turmoil to expand its influence in the Indian Ocean? And what is the fate of the thousands of Chagossians forced to leave their homeland? Don't miss out on this detailed analysis of one of the biggest geopolitical events of the year. Subscribe to the channel now. Recently, the UK government officially announced the decision to transfer sovereignty over a strategic group of islands in the Indian Ocean to Mauritius, ending years of negotiations. This move, although initiated under the previous government, was surprisingly accelerated under the Labour Party and Keir Starmer. Many believe the decision was made while Parliament was not in session to avoid scrutiny and opposition from MPs and the public. Specifically, this group includes islands from the Chagos archipelago, where Diego Garcia is the largest island, hosting a significant military base. This decision is seen as a major strategic failure for the UK government, as Mauritius is a small nation, and the larger concern is China's significant interests in the area. Many analysts fear that China could exploit the situation using its economic and political power to expand its influence in the region. The decision to cede a part of British territory without consulting the public has led to fierce criticism of Keir Starmer. The public is not only worried about national security, but also feels that the government is prioritising international interests over the rights of the British people. The story dates back decades, when the United Kingdom established sovereignty over the Chagos Islands. However, in 2019, the International Court of Justice issued a non-binding ruling stating that the UK had no right to control these islands and that they should be returned to Mauritius. Although this decision was not legally binding, the British government under Keir Starmer decided to comply. Notably, the inhabitants of these islands did not want to become part of Mauritius. In fact, they requested to retain their British citizenship, but this was ignored. This raises the question, why is the UK government willing to hand over the islands to a country that the local residents do not wish to belong to? According to Benedict Spence, a well-known commentator, this decision seems to be oppressive, as Mauritius is simply trying to take advantage by pressuring the UK through international organisations. However, the ease with which the British government accepted this has sparked concerns that the Labour Party, particularly Keir Starmer, is heading down a path the people do not want. The most worrying aspect is not just the handover of the islands, but also the long-term strategic consequences that the UK will face. The Chagos archipelago holds immense strategic importance, particularly Diego Garcia, where the largest British and American military base in the region is located. This base has been used in several critical military operations, including the Gulf War and other military missions in the Middle East. Handing over control of these islands to Mauritius not only puts Diego Garcia at risk of being blockaded, but also opens the door for China, a country with close ties to Mauritius, to gain access to the area. China has repeatedly expressed its desire to increase influence in the Indian Ocean region, and the Chagos Islands would be an ideal location for China to establish military facilities or listening stations. Even if China only gains access to one of the smaller islands in the Chagos archipelago, it could render Diego Garcia a useless base. Military experts, including former NATO commander Chris Parry, have criticised this decision as completely against national interests. Parry argued that handing over the islands to Mauritius is an ideological decision, not one based on practical strategy. He also warned that China could easily place its forces on other islands in the Chagos archipelago and weaken the entire security system of Diego Garcia. This decision not only raises issues of national security, but also creates far-reaching impacts on the domestic political situation. Many British citizens feel abandoned and betrayed by their government. They believe that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are prioritising international interests over the interests of the British people. This further exacerbates political division and discontent within the community. Many political commentators argue that this is an unforgivable mistake and a sign that the British government is gradually losing control over important strategic issues. Some Conservative Party MPs have even called for emergency hearings in Parliament to discuss this decision and demand that Keir Starmer be held accountable to the public. In the context of an increasingly complex global political landscape, the relationship between the UK and China faces significant challenges. The rising influence of China in the Indian Ocean region, coupled with its assertive actions to expand military and economic power, poses difficult questions for the UK regarding the future of this relationship. China has invested billions of dollars in infrastructure projects in Africa and smaller nations like Mauritius, enabling it to gain support in international organizations. The reclamation of control over the Chagos archipelago by Mauritius could be part of China's long-term strategic plan. Moreover, the political differences between the UK and China impact not only trade agreements but also profoundly affect international security issues, including the South China Sea and Taiwan. The UK must also contend with pressure from its allies, especially the United States, to clarify its stance on China. Without adjusting its collaboration with Beijing, the UK risks being isolated within a Western alliance that is increasingly united on this issue. However, this does not mean that the UK must completely sever ties with China. The country remains an important trading partner, and the economic relationship between the two could continue to grow in areas such as technology, climate change, and education. The future of the UK-China relationship will depend on the flexibility in adjusting strategies from both sides, aiming to maintain economic ties while upholding core values related to democracy and human rights. Military experts have voiced concerns about the serious consequences that may arise from the UK government's decision to transfer sovereignty over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, a former NATO commander, has warned that relinquishing control of these strategically located islands not only poses significant security risks for the UK, but also affects the US and its allies in maintaining control over the Indian Ocean region. According to Parry, the Chagos archipelago, particularly Diego Garcia, plays a crucial role in global military strategy. Diego Garcia is a key military base for the US and the UK, capable of supporting military operations ranging from airstrikes to naval supply missions. It is also one of the most important bases in the defense strategy for the Indian Ocean, a region where China is increasing its influence. Any intervention by China in this area, even just gaining access, could severely undermine the strategic value of the Diego Garcia base. Parry also emphasized another important point. Although the UK has signed a 99-year lease agreement for the Diego Garcia base, the Mauritian government, under pressure from China or any other country, could easily violate the terms or change its policies in the future. This could lead to Mauritius allowing unfriendly nations to use other islands in the Chagos archipelago as military bases. As a result, the military presence of the UK and the US in the region could be rendered ineffective. Meanwhile, other experts, such as Professor Michael Clarke, former director of the Royal United Services Institute, point out that abandoning the Chagos Islands reflects weakness in the UK's foreign and defence policy. According to Clarke, this is a prime example of a short-sighted political decision that fails to consider long-term consequences. He argues that while the UK government may wish to demonstrate progress in addressing colonial legacy issues, it cannot be denied that this decision seriously undermines the UK's standing and strategic influence on the international stage. Clarke also raises a thought-provoking question. Why is the UK returning sovereignty over such a strategically important area at a time when the world is facing numerous international security challenges? With China's rise and the competition for influence among powers in the Indian Ocean region, the UK's decision is not only a concession to the international community, but also risks weakening the military power of the West. Additionally, he highlights that relinquishing the Chagos Islands could set a dangerous precedent for other territorial disputes. Sovereignty disputes over the Falkland Islands with Argentina or Gibraltar with Spain could be rekindled as these nations perceive the UK's weakness in defending its territories. Overall, military experts share a common view. The UK government's decision is a significant strategic mistake. They fear that in the near future, China will exploit the power vacuum in this area to expand its influence, and the Diego Garcia base could become worthless. This would not only weaken the strategic standing of the UK and the US, but also directly impact the defensive and security capabilities of the West on a global scale. In the current context, the UK's foreign policy is facing significant challenges. Decisions regarding overseas territories, specifically the exchange or adjustment of sovereignty, not only impact the global standing of the nation, but also create numerous repercussions for the UK's reputation and influence in the region and worldwide. The first noticeable consequence is the decline in international trust towards the UK. Decisions related to the sovereignty of islands or territories not only spark domestic controversies, but also raise doubts among many international partners about the UK's long-term commitment to international agreements. Particularly, NATO and EU allies may reconsider their security or cooperation commitments with the UK if its foreign policy is perceived as unstable and lacking in sustainability. This poses a significant risk at a time when the UK is trying to reinforce its position following Brexit, aiming to rebuild a network of allies and trade partners across the globe. Moreover, this issue could exacerbate internal tensions within the country. Inconsistent foreign policy decisions, such as those regarding islands or territories, can easily erode public trust, especially in an already divided political landscape in the UK. Political parties may exploit these decisions to promote their agendas, intensifying criticism and creating deeper divisions among the populace. The future of the UK's foreign policy will largely depend on how leaders address the current challenges. One crucial factor is the ability to balance national interests with international pressures. The UK needs to demonstrate that, regardless of internal changes, it remains a reliable partner and a power that positively influences the security and prosperity of allied nations. At the same time, reshaping the UK's role on the international stage requires a long-term strategy, consulting top experts and drawing lessons from historical experiences of countries that have faced similar situations. An unavoidable prospect is the shift in relationships between the UK and major powers such as the US, China, and Russia. While the UK continues to seek a strategic relationship with the US, it must also be cautious about straining relations with other partners like China and Russia. Skillfully managing these relationships will help the UK minimise risks and build a more diverse network of partners. Looking further into the future, the UK may face tough decisions regarding maintaining naval power, protecting overseas territories, and balancing defence commitments with NATO allies and self-sufficiency. Meanwhile, pressure from defence budget cuts and changes in the global political structure will force leaders to rethink long-term strategies, especially in a context where the global economy is undergoing significant fluctuations. The future of the UK's foreign policy remains uncertain. However, one thing is clear. The UK needs to become more flexible and ready to respond to new challenges. This requires not only diplomacy finesse, but also a long-term strategic vision, helping the UK maintain and reinforce its position on the international stage in the coming decade. What are your thoughts on the issues we discussed today? Please leave your comments below and share your thoughts with us. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest videos from us about the political situation in the UK and around the world. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.